Berlin, March 1953. A Soviet NKVD officer walks through the dimly lit corridors of a safe house in the American sector. His target is in the next room. A defector, a traitor to the motherland who has been feeding information to American intelligence for 6 months. The officer's hand moves to his coat pocket, not to the standard Tokarev pistol on his hip. That would wake the entire building. Instead, his fingers close around something that looks like it was assembled in a garage from spare parts. A crude cylinder. No slide. No visible mechanism. Just a grip, a trigger, and a suppressor that made up 2/3 of its length. The door opens. The target looks up. The officer fires once. The sound is no louder than a book closing. The target slumps forward, dead before he hits the desk. The officer walks out through the front door, past the American guards, past the street patrol. The murder weapon tucked back into his coat pocket. No one heard a thing. The S4M silent pistol was never meant to be beautiful. It was never meant to be comfortable. It was meant to do one thing: kill silently in close quarters when noise meant capture, when capture meant death. And it did this with a sound signature so impossibly quiet that Soviet assassins could eliminate targets in occupied buildings without alerting anyone in the adjacent rooms. The problem facing Soviet intelligence in the late 1940s was brutally simple. The Great Patriotic War had ended, the Cold War had begun, and the NKVD, soon to become the KGB, needed to eliminate targets across occupied Europe without starting World War III. Soviet agents were operating deep in enemy territory. West Berlin, surrounded by American, British, and French sectors. Vienna, divided into occupation zones. Eastern European countries with active anti-communist resistance. Inside the Soviet Union itself, hunting down collaborators and deserters. The challenge was not just killing. Any fool with a knife could kill. The challenge was killing silently. When an NKVD operative needed to eliminate a target in an apartment building, the options were limited and all were flawed. Knives required close combat. Victims struggled. They screamed. They bled everywhere. Evidence was impossible to hide. Garrotes required strength and perfect positioning. One mistake and the target would fight back. Noise would bring witnesses. Poison was slow and unpredictable. Hours or days between administration and death. The target could talk, could warn others, could reach a hospital. Standard suppressed weapons existed, but they were inadequate for true silent killing. The captured German Wellrod pistol, obtained during the war, achieved approximately 73 decibels. Impressive, but it was bolt action. Slow. One shot, then manually cycle. In a dynamic situation, that delay could be fatal. The American high-standard HDM used .22 caliber rounds. Quiet, but lacking stopping power. Multiple shots were often required. More shots meant more chances for something to go wrong. Soviet standard-issue pistols were hopeless for covert work. The Tokarev TT-33 produced approximately 155 decibels unsuppressed. Even with improvised suppressors, it remained clearly audible as gunfire. The muzzle flash would light up a dark room like a camera flash. What Soviet intelligence needed was something that had never existed in their arsenal. A weapon so quiet it could be fired in a building without alerting people in the next room. A weapon so reliable it could not malfunction when the operator's life depended on a single shot. A weapon so simple it could be manufactured quickly and distributed to operatives across the Iron Curtain. The specification seemed impossible with Soviet manufacturing capabilities, which prioritize quantity and ruggedness over precision. But impossible had never stopped Soviet engineers before. The task fell to a design team at Tsny Tokhmash, the Central Institute for Precision Machine Building, located in Klimovsk, approximately 55 kilometers south of Moscow. This facility was responsible for developing specialist weapons for Soviet special services. The exact names of the designers remain classified even today, lost in the bureaucratic secrecy of Soviet military archives. But what they created would serve Soviet intelligence for decades. The team approached the problem not as traditional gunsmiths, but as engineers solving an acoustic and mechanical challenge. They understood three fundamental truths. Truth 1. Supersonic bullets create sonic cracks regardless of suppression. Standard 7.62 25mm Tokarev ammunition travels at approximately 430 meters per second, well above the 343 meters per second speed of sound at sea level. Every supersonic shot produces an unavoidable crack as the bullet breaks the sound barrier. The solution was to design around a different cartridge entirely. The S4M used a purpose-built round, the SP4 7.62 63. This was not simply a reduced charge standard round. It was a completely unique design. The cartridge was longer than standard pistol ammunition, but the bullet itself was subsonic from the moment it left the case. The propellant charge was calculated precisely to push the 16-gram bullet to approximately 200 meters per second. Subsonic, no sonic crack, silent in flight. Truth 2. Semi-automatic actions create mechanical noise. Conventional semi-automatic pistols produce significant sound from multiple sources. The slide cycling backward, the spent case ejecting the return spring compression, the slide slamming forward a fresh round chambering. The S4M eliminated this problem entirely by using a manually operated bolt action. After firing, the shooter rotated a charging handle 90 degrees, pulled it rearward to extract the spent cartridge, then pushed forward to chamber the next round from the 4-round internal magazine. Slow? Absolutely. Silent? Completely. In covert assassination, you got one shot, maybe two if things went wrong. Rate of fire was irrelevant. Truth 3. Propellant gas expansion at the muzzle creates the bang of gunfire. When a bullet exits the barrel, the high-pressure gases behind it expand violently into the atmosphere. This creates the characteristic explosive sound. The S4M addressed this with an integrated suppressor that comprised approximately 70% of the weapon's total length. The suppressor was not an attachment. It was the weapon. Inside the suppressor cylinder were two chambers separated by rubber disc seals, similar to car tire inner tubes. When fired, the bullet passed through these rubber discs. The discs sealed behind the bullet, trapping the propellant gases. The gases expanded gradually through the chambers, cooling and losing pressure before eventually venting to atmosphere through small holes. The effect was extraordinary. A standard Tokarev TT-33 produces approximately 155 decibels at the muzzle, loud enough to cause immediate permanent hearing damage. The S4M produced approximately 65-70 decibels. This is roughly equivalent to normal conversation at 1 meter distance. At 5 meters, the sound became nearly indistinguishable from ambient urban noise. The resulting weapon. Overall length, 200 millimeters, approximately 8 inches. Weight, 850 grams loaded, approximately 1.9 pounds. Magazine capacity, 4 rounds in an internal box magazine. Effective range, 25 meters maximum, with optimal use at under 10 meters. The grip was crude, simple cast metal with basic checkering. The sights were rudimentary, a front post and rear notch, adequate for the weapon's intended point-blank use. There was no safety mechanism. The weapon was stored with an empty chamber, only loaded immediately before use. The charging handle protruded from the right side, requiring the shooter to break their grip to cycle the action. By any aesthetic standard, it was ugly. By the standards of silent killing, it was perfect. If you're finding this deep dive into Soviet engineering interesting, a quick subscribe helps more than you know. Now let's examine how Soviet operatives actually used this weapon in the field, and how it compared to what the Americans and British were developing. Production began in the early 1950s. Exact numbers remain classified, but estimates suggest several thousand units were manufactured through the 1960s. Distribution was tightly controlled. The S-4M was never issued to regular Soviet military units. It went exclusively to NKVD, later KGB operatives, Spetsnaz reconnaissance units, GRU military intelligence officers. The weapon earned immediate respect among those who used it, though operational details remained scarce due to the nature of the missions. West Berlin, early 1950s. During the division of Berlin, the S-4M saw extensive use in the Cold War's most active espionage battleground. KGB operatives used the weapon for what they termed executive sanctions, the elimination of defectors, double agents, and intelligence assets who had become liabilities. One declassified report describes a target being eliminated in a boarding house in the American sector. The target was in a second-floor room. American military police were stationed on the ground floor. The operative entered through a rear window, fired once at close range, exited the same way. The body was not discovered until morning. The American guards heard nothing unusual during their shift. Hungary, October 1956. During the Hungarian Revolution, Soviet special forces used S-4M pistols to eliminate resistance leaders in urban environments. Hungarian resistance had taken control of parts of Budapest. Soviet infantry faced guerrilla fighters who knew every alley and building. Spetsnaz units infiltrated resistance-held areas at night. Sentries were eliminated silently using S-4M pistols before conventional forces moved in. The silence of the weapon created psychological terror. Resistance fighters began to fear the darkness, knowing that sentries could be killed without warning, without sound, without any chance to alert their comrades. Czechoslovakia, August 1968. During the Prague Spring, as Soviet forces invaded Czechoslovakia to suppress reformist movements, KGB operatives used S-4M pistols against key figures in the resistance. Targets included journalists, intellectuals, and military officers who were organizing opposition to Soviet occupation. The weapon allowed assassinations in conditions that would have been impossible with conventional firearms. Targets could be eliminated in apartment buildings, in crowded Prague streets after dark, in circumstances where a gunshot would have brought immediate response from Czech civilians or military personnel. Afghanistan, 1980s. Perhaps the last confirmed operational use came during the Soviet-Afghan War. Spetsnaz teams operating behind Mujahideen lines used S-4M pistols to eliminate sentries guarding supply routes and staging areas. The weapon's ability to kill silently at close range proved valuable in reconnaissance missions where maintaining stealth was paramount. Afghan fighters began to fear close approaches, understanding that Soviet special forces could kill without the distinctive crack of a Kalashnikov that would alert their positions. The psychological impact across all these conflicts was consistent. Enemy forces learned that silence offered no protection. The absence of gunfire did not mean the absence of danger. Defectors understood that betraying the Soviet Union might mean death without warning, without sound, without any chance for American protection to respond. How did the S-4M compare to what the West was developing during the same period? American, high-standard HDM, 22 LR, sound level, approximately 90 decibels, caliber, 22, long rifle, 5.6mm capacity, 10 rounds, action, semi-automatic. The American OSS and later CIA favored the HDM for covert operations. It was notably quiet and offered quick follow-up shots thanks to its semi-automatic action. However, the 22 caliber round was a critical limitation. Against an unalerted target at close range, it was lethal. But if the first shot failed to immediately incapacitate, the target could fight back. The small round lacked the guaranteed stopping power for dynamic situations. British, Welrod Mk2, 9x19mm. Sound level, approximately 73 decibels. Caliber, 9mm parabellum, subsonic capacity, 8 rounds, later models. Action, bolt action. The British Welrod was the closest Western equivalent to the S-4M in concept. Both used bolt action to eliminate mechanical noise. Both integrated the suppressor into the weapon's design. Both prioritized silence over rate of fire. The Welrod was slightly quieter than the S4M, but used a larger, more complex suppressor design. It was also longer and more cumbersome to conceal. Soviet S4M 7.6263 SP4, sound level approximately 65 to 70 decibels, caliber 7.62 mm subsonic special capacity, 4 rounds, action rotating bolt. The S4M sat between the American and British solutions, more stopping power than the HDM, simpler construction than the Welrod, shorter overall length than either in the brutal arithmetic of silent killing. The HDM was best for multiple targets or uncertain situations where follow-up shots might be needed. The Welrod was best for absolute silence at slightly longer ranges. The S4M was best for guaranteed kills at contact distance with minimal training required. Soviet doctrine emphasized simplicity. The S4M could be issued to an operative with minimal instruction. Point at target from arm's length, pull trigger, target dies. Manually cycle bolt if second shot needed. No complex aiming, no concern about follow-up shot placement, just close-range execution. The S4M had one critical limitation that plagued all manually sealed suppressed weapons of its era. The rubber disc seals that trapped the propellant gases degraded with use. Each time a bullet passed through, the hole in the rubber enlarged slightly. After approximately 200 rounds, the seals would need replacement. The S4M had one critical limitation that plagued all manually sealed suppressed weapons of its era. The rubber disc seals that trapped the propellant gases degraded with use. Each time a bullet passed through, the hole in the rubber enlarged slightly. After approximately 200 rounds, the seals would need replacement. By then, an estimated 3,000 to 5,000 S4M pistols had been manufactured. Their final disposition remains unclear. Some were likely destroyed. Others remain in storage. A few have surfaced in illegal arms markets, though their specialized ammunition makes them useless to criminals. Legacy. The S4M influenced Soviet suppressor design for decades. Its internal sealing principle was refined in later weapons like the PSS, which used a completely different approach with self-contained silent cartridges. More broadly, the S4M demonstrated Soviet willingness to sacrifice conventional weapon characteristics, capacity, rate of fire, range, in pursuit of a single specialized capability executed perfectly. This philosophy would characterize Soviet special weapons development throughout the Cold War: crude, simple, utterly effective at their intended task. Museums rarely display the S4M. The weapon remains largely classified. The few examples that exist in Western collections are usually deactivated or incomplete. But its influence persists in modern suppressed weapons used by Russian Spetsnaz and FSB units today, which continue to prioritize silence and simplicity over the multi-role capabilities favored by Western Special Operations Forces. Berlin, March 1953. An NKVD officer walks through the corridors of a safe house. His target is in the next room. The sound is no louder than a book closing. The target is dead. The officer walks out past the guards. The S4M pistol was never meant to win wars. It was meant to win a different kind of conflict. One fought in shadows, in occupied cities, in the space between a Soviet operative's coat pocket and a traitor's skull. 65 decibels. Normal conversation. A life ending without sound. 4 rounds. Bolt action. Crude cast metal. That was Soviet engineering under pressure. That was the NKVD. That was the KGB. And that was how the Soviet Union eliminated its enemies without anyone hearing the shot.